The vampire king felt his baby's pain through their blood bond and stormed into the nursery expecting enemies. Instead, he found his human nanny hiding the dying prince in a secret passage. What he didn't know, she was the only one trying to save his son, while his most trusted healer was the one who poisoned him. The scream tore through Aldrich's chest like a blade. Not a sound, a feeling. Pure, white-hot agony that didn't belong to him. It ripped him from his throne mid-sentence, leaving 3 vampire lords staring as their king clutched his ribs and gasped. Kieran, Aldrich choked out. His son's name. He was moving before the pain faded. Down marble corridors that blurred into stone. Past guards who barely had time to bow. The blood bond, that ancient tie between vampire royalty and their heirs, screamed danger with every heartbeat. His baby was hurt. Dying, maybe. Aldrich kicked open the nursery door hard enough to splinter the wood. The room was dark. Too dark. The enchanted lanterns that usually bathed the space in soft amber light had been extinguished. Only moonlight filtered through the tall windows, casting silver bars across the floor. Marin, Aldrich's voice cracked like thunder. His fangs were already extended, his vision sharpening to predator clarity. He could smell fear. Human fear. "Where is my son?" A shape moved near the far wall. Small. Trembling. "Your Majesty, please." The human nanny's voice was barely a whisper. Aldrich crossed the room in a blur of supernatural speed. He seized Marin by the shoulders, lifting her off the ground. She was tiny compared to him, barely 5'3", with dark curls that had escaped her bun and terror written across her freckled face. "Where is Kieran?" The words came out as a roar. Marin didn't fight. She went completely still in his grip, brown eyes locked on his. "He's safe. I swear to God, he's safe. But you have to listen. I feel his pain." Aldrich shook her once, rage and fear warring in his chest. "I feel him dying." "What did you do?" "Nothing. I saved him." Tears streaked down her cheeks. "Please, Your Majesty, you have to trust me." "Trust." Aldrich's laugh was bitter. "You're human. You're prey. And my son is—" A weak cry cut him off. Thin, broken. Coming from behind the tapestry that depicted the founding of the vampire kingdom. Aldrich dropped Marin and spun toward the sound. He tore the tapestry down with one hand, centuries-old fabric ripping like paper. Behind it was a section of wall he'd never noticed, a stone panel slightly ajar. His hands found the gap. He wrenched the hidden door open. The secret passage was narrow and dark, carved into the keep's ancient bones. And there, bundled in blankets on the cold stone floor, was Kieran. Aldrich's heart stopped. His son, barely 4 months old, with his mother's pale hair and Aldrich's silver eyes, lay limp in the makeshift nest. The baby's skin was gray.
Wrong.
And his veins. God, his veins were black, spreading like cracks across his tiny arms and neck.
No.
No, no, no. Aldrich scooped up the infant with trembling hands. Kieran was cold. Too cold. His little chest barely moved. The blood bond pulsed again, weaker now. Fading. What happened to him? Aldrich's voice broke. He turned on Marin, who had scrambled to her feet behind him. "What did you do?" "I didn't do anything." Marin held up her hands. "I found him like this. About 20 minutes ago, when I came to check on him. He was convulsing, Your Majesty. Those black lines were spreading and he wouldn't stop crying, and she swallowed hard. I knew something was wrong. Something bad. Then why hide him? Why not call the guards? The healers?" Aldrich cradled Kieran against his chest, trying to will warmth back into the tiny body. Marin's expression shifted. Fear became something harder. Determined. "Because it was the healer," she said quietly. Aldrich went very still. "What?" "I saw her. Lady Seraphine." Marin's voice gained strength. "I came in early, I couldn't sleep, and I saw her standing over Kieran's crib. She had a vial, Your Majesty. Red glass. She She was feeding him something. When she saw me, she ran. That's impossible, but even as Aldrich said it, pieces clicked into place. Seraphine was the royal healer, one of the oldest vampires in the kingdom. She delivered Kieran herself. She had unrestricted access to the nursery. Why would she? I don't know. Maren moved closer, her small hands reaching toward the baby. But after she left, Kieran started screaming. And then those lines appeared. I've worked in this nursery for 6 months, Your Majesty. I've never seen anything like this. Aldrich looked down at his son, at the black veins spreading like poison beneath translucent skin, at the way Kieran's silver eyes, when they fluttered open, seemed unfocused.
Lost.
You hid him from the healer, Aldrich said slowly. I hid him from everyone. Maren's chin lifted despite the fear still bright in her eyes. I didn't know who to trust. For all I knew, the guards were in on it. The other servants. Anyone. So I remember this passage. I found it weeks ago while cleaning, but I never told anyone, and I thought she trailed off. I thought if I could just keep him safe until you felt it through the bond, until you came. Aldrich stared at this human girl. This 24-year-old woman from Atlanta who'd come to the vampire kingdom through a cultural exchange program, who probably still dreamed of going home, who had just confessed to hiding the crown prince from everyone in the castle, including the king himself, because she didn't know who else might want to hurt him. He's been poisoned, Aldrich said. Not a question. I think so. Yes, Maren nodded. The vial, it had vampire blood in it, I think. It smelled like copper and roses. But wrong. Rotten. Vampire blood. Fed to an infant heir. Aldrich's mind raced. Pure vampire blood was potent, intoxicating, even. But for a baby? A child too young to have developed any resistance? It would be like poison. Like acid in his veins. Unless someone was trying to make it poison. Seraphine fled? Aldrich asked. The moment she saw me, she dropped the vial. It shattered, and she was gone. I haven't seen her since. Aldrich stood, still cradling Kieran against his chest. The baby whimpered, a sound that tore at something deep in Aldrich's soul. Come with me, he ordered. Maren blinked. Your Majesty?
Come. With.
Me, Aldrich was already moving toward the door. If what you're saying is true, if Seraphine poisoned my son, then she's still in this castle. And we're going to find her.
Now.
Maren grabbed a cloak from the hook by the door and hurried after him. What if she's already gone? Then we find out why Aldrich's voice was cold, controlled. The voice of a king who'd ruled for 3 centuries and survived a dozen assassination attempts. And if anyone tries to stop us, if anyone so much as questions why I'm bringing you, they'll answer to me. Understood? Yes, Your Majesty. They burst into the corridor. Guards snapped to attention. Lock down the castle, Aldrich commanded. No one enters. No one leaves. Find Lady Seraphine and bring her to me, alive. The guards exchanged glances. Your Majesty is the prince.
Now.
They scattered. Aldrich looked down at Maren. At this human who'd risked everything. Execution, torture, being torn apart by vampires who didn't need an excuse to hate her kind, to save his son. If you're lying to me, he said quietly, I'll make your death last week's. Maren met his eyes. I'm not lying. Something in her voice made him believe her. And that, Aldrich thought as he strode toward the healer's wing with his dying son in his arms and a human nanny at his side, terrified him more than anything else tonight. Because if Maren was telling the truth, it meant someone in his own court, someone he'd trusted for centuries, had just tried to murder the heir to the vampire throne. And Aldrich would burn his entire kingdom to ashes before he let them try again. The healer's wings smelled like herbs and old blood. Aldrich kicked open the carved double doors, making 2 apprentice healers jump back in alarm. Out, he commanded. They fled without question. Aldrich laid Kieran on the examination table, a slab of polished black stone inscribed with healing runes. The baby's breathing had gotten shallower. The black veins now covered half his tiny body, spreading like cracks in porcelain. Marin moved to the shelves, scanning bottles with practiced efficiency. What are we looking for? Anything that might tell us what Seraphine used. Aldrich placed his hand over Kieran's chest, channeling what healing magic he possessed. It was like trying to stop a flood with his bare hands. The poison, whatever it was, pushed back against him, dark and oily.
Wrong.
Your Majesty, Marin's voice was tight. She held up a leather-bound journal, pages covered in Seraphine's cramped handwriting. This was on her desk.
It's
God, it's a log. Experiments. Aldrich was beside her in an instant. He snatched the journal, eyes scanning the entries. His blood went cold. Day 47. Subject shows increased aggression after third feeding. Bloodline responds well to elder variant. Day 63. Younger subjects more malleable. Royal blood demonstrates strongest reaction. Day 89. Human interference minimal. Access to air confirmed. She's been planning this for months, Aldrich breathed. His hands tightened on the journal, nearly tearing the pages. She's been using the nursery as a laboratory. But why? Marin moved back to Kieran, gently touching the baby's forehead. What was she trying to do? Aldrich flipped to the last entry, dated earlier that evening. Final trial. Pure ancestral blood administered. If heir survives integration, the future of our kind will be rewritten. If not, the throne passes to one more suitable. She was trying to force-feed him vampire blood, Aldrich said slowly. But not just any blood. Ancestral blood. The pure strain from the first vampires. He looked at Kieran, understanding dawning like a nightmare. It's too strong. His body can't process it. It's not an injury, it's rejection. His own vampiric nature is trying to purge something it recognizes as both self and poison. Can you stop it? Marin asked. I don't know, Aldrich returned to his son, placing both hands on the small chest. He could feel Kieran's heart. Too fast, too weak. Ancestral blood hasn't been used in centuries. It's forbidden. The power is too unstable, too concentrated. Even adult vampires can barely tolerate it, but there has to be something. The doors burst open. Lord Cassius strode in, 3 council members behind him. The elder vampire's face was carved from stone, his silver hair pulled back severely. Your Majesty, we heard about the prince. We've come to, he stopped, eyes landing on Marin. Why is the human still here? Because she saved my son's life, Aldrich said flatly. Saved? Cassius moved closer, eyeing Kieran's blackened veins with obvious concern. The guards reported that you found the prince hidden in a secret passage. That the nanny had concealed him from the staff, his gaze sharpened. From all of us. Because the person who poisoned him had access to this wing, Marin said before Aldrich could respond. Because I didn't know who was involved. Poisoned. Lord Theron, another council member, looked shocked. That's a serious accusation, girl. It's the truth, Aldrich handed them the journal. Seraphine has been experimenting with ancestral blood. She used my son as her final test subject. The council members passed the journal between them, expressions darkening. Where is Lady Seraphine now? Cassius asked.
gone.
She fled after Marin witnessed the poisoning. Aldrich checked Kieran's pulse. Still there, but fading. I've ordered a full lockdown. Then we should question the human. Cassius gestured at Marin. She's the only witness. For all we know, she could be lying. This could be a human plot. She's telling the truth, Aldrich interrupted. How can you be certain? Theron demanded. Your Majesty, with respect, you're emotionally compromised. Your son is dying. The human could have poisoned him herself and created this story too. Enough, Aldrich's voice dropped to a lethal whisper. Marin stays with me. Anyone who tries to remove her answers to me personally. The council members exchanged dark looks. Your Majesty, Cassius said carefully, the human must be detained. For questioning. It's protocol. Surely you understand. I understand that my son is dying and the only person who tried to save him is standing right here, Aldrich met each council member's eyes in turn. Seraphine will be found and executed. Until then, Marin is under my personal protection. Challenge that if you dare. Silence fell like a guillotine blade. Finally, Cassius bowed stiffly. As you wish, Your Majesty. But the court will demand answers. The court can wait, Aldrich turned back to Kieran. Now leave. All of you. They filed out, but Aldrich caught the look Cassius shot Marin, pure hatred wrapped in aristocratic disdain. When the door closed, Marin exhaled shakily. They think I did this. They think humans are incapable of loyalty. Aldrich studied his son's gray face. They're wrong. Can you heal him? No, the admission tasted like ash. I can slow the decay, but ancestral blood poisoning. There's no cure I know of. Not here. Marin was quiet for a moment. Then, what if we went somewhere else? Aldrich looked at her sharply. What? My grandmother was a healer. Back in Georgia. Before she died, Marin's words came faster now. She used to tell me stories about old magic, real magic, the kind that predates vampires and humans splitting apart. There's a man she learned from, Elias Crane. He lives in Thornhollow, on the human side of the border. A human healer? Aldrich's laugh was bitter. Humans hate us. He hates everyone equally, Marin countered. But he knows things, Your Majesty. Old things. If anyone can identify this poison and stop it, she met his eyes. We're out of options. Aldrich looked at his son. At the black veins consuming him by the minute. Thornhollow is 3 days' ride, he said quietly. Kieran doesn't have 3 days. No, Aldrich agreed. He doesn't. He made his decision. Then we leave now. Aldrich returned to Seraphine's chambers an hour before dawn, Marin trailing close behind. The council's voices still echoed in his head, demands for Marin's arrest, accusations of treason, threats of revolt if he didn't handle the human properly. He'd ignored them all. Kieran was wrapped in enchanted blankets that kept him warm, though the black veins had now spread to his face. Aldrich carried him in one arm while his free hand pushed open Seraphine's door. The room was chaos. Drawers hung open, contents spilled across the floor. Books lay scattered like broken birds. Someone had left in a hurry. She knew we'd come looking, Marin said, kneeling beside an overturned desk. Papers crunched under her feet. Aldrich moved to the fireplace. Ash still glowed orange in the grate, recent burns. He crouched, careful not to jostle Kieran, and sifted through the remains with his free hand. Fragments of parchment, mostly destroyed, but a few pieces had survived at the edges where the fire hadn't quite reached. Here, he pulled out a corner of what looked like a diagram, circles within circles, symbols he recognized as old vampiric. The language used before humans and vampires split into separate species. She was trying to burn the evidence. Marin leaned over his shoulder. Can you read it? Some. Aldrich squinted at the archaic text. This symbol means lineage, and this one, purity. She was researching bloodline manipulation. Why would she want to change Kieran's bloodline? Not change. Control. Aldrich stood, jaw tight. Ancestral blood doesn't just strengthen vampires. It makes them unpredictable, powerful beyond measure, but unstable. If Seraphine could force it into an infant, someone whose vampiric nature wasn't fully formed yet, she might be able to shape how that power manifested. Shape it how? However she wanted. Aldrich's voice was flat. A prince who could be controlled, molded, made into a weapon instead of a ruler. Marin's face paled. That's insane. That's treason. Aldrich moved to the bed, scanning for anything else useful. A glint of red caught his eye. Tucked half under the pillow was a small vial. He picked it up carefully. The glass was warm to the touch. Inside, maybe a dozen drops of dark red liquid clung to the sides, thick as honey. Is that? Marin started. Ancestral blood. Aldrich held it up to the lamplight. The liquid seemed to move on its own, swirling in patterns that hurt to watch. This is what she fed Kieran. God, even the residue is potent. I can feel it from here. He tucked the vial into his coat pocket, evidence, and possibly the only sample they'd have to show the human healer. A knock at the door made them both freeze. Your Majesty? A guard's voice, uncertain. The council requests your immediate presence in the throne room. Aldrich exchanged a look with Marin. Tell them I'm occupied.
They
insist, Your Majesty. Lord Cassius says it's urgent. About the nanny. Marin's expression hardened. They're going to try again. Let them try, but Aldrich knew she was right. The council had never approved of humans in the castle, even as servants. Having one accused, however falsely, of harming the heir, they'd use it as an excuse to demand her execution. He couldn't let that happen. Not when she was the only reason Kieran was still alive. Stay here, Aldrich told her. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone. Your Majesty. That's an order, Marin. He left before she could argue. Kieran still cradled against his chest. The baby's heartbeat was so faint now that even with his vampiric hearing, Aldrich had to concentrate to hear it. The throne room was packed. Every council member, half the court nobles, and what looked like the entire palace guard. They fell silent when Aldrich entered, eyes tracking him as he walked to his throne. He didn't sit. He stood before it, Kieran visible to everyone. You summoned me, he said coldly. Lord Cassius stepped forward, flanked by Theron and Lady Morgana. Your Majesty, we've been discussing the situation. The attack on your son.
The
circumstances. Speak plainly, Cassius. The human must be detained, Cassius's voice carried across the hall. For proper questioning. You've allowed her to remain free based solely on her word, but we have no proof that Lady Seraphine was involved. Only the nanny's testimony. I have proof. Aldrich pulled out Seraphine's journal and threw it at Cassius's feet. Read it. She documented everything. Cassius picked up the journal, scanned a few pages, then looked up with an expression that made Aldrich's blood run cold. It wasn't shock. It was calculation. This proves Seraphine was conducting experiments, Cassius said slowly. It does not prove she poisoned the prince. For all we know, the human found this journal and used it to create her story. She could have poisoned the heir herself and blamed a conveniently absent scapegoat. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. That's absurd, Aldrich snapped. Is it? Lady Morgana stepped forward. Your Majesty, humans have wanted to weaken our kingdom for generations. What better way than to eliminate the heir? And when caught, blame a respected healer who cannot defend herself. Marin saved my son's life. Or she's the reason he's dying. Theron's voice was hard. Your Majesty, we understand you're under tremendous stress. But you must see reason. The human has to be questioned. Properly. By the council. Aldrich knew what properly questioned meant. Torture. Days of it, until Marin confessed to anything they wanted. No, he said flatly. The room erupted. Voices rose in protest, demands, barely concealed threats. Cassius raised a hand for silence. When he spoke again, his tone was almost gentle. Your Majesty, if you refuse to allow the council to investigate this matter, we will have no choice but to assume you are compromised, that perhaps the human has influenced you through some means. Are you questioning my judgment, Cassius? I'm questioning your objectivity. Cassius met his eyes steadily. Your son is dying. You're desperate. The human offers a convenient solution, a story that absolves her and points blame elsewhere. Can you truly say you're thinking clearly? Aldrich looked around the throne room, at faces he'd known for decades, some for centuries. He saw doubt in their eyes, suspicion,
fear.
They didn't trust Marin, and increasingly, they didn't trust him. The council demands the human be surrendered for questioning, Cassius said formally. Immediately. Do you comply, Your Majesty? Aldrich looked down at Kieran, at his dying son, whose only chance of survival lay with a human healer in a town that hated vampires. He made his choice. No, Aldrich said quietly. I don't. He turned and walked out of the throne room, ignoring the explosion of voices behind him. When he reached Seraphine's chambers, he found Marin waiting with a packed bag. "We're leaving, aren't we?" she asked. "We're leaving," Aldrich confirmed.
Now.
The decoy carriage left through the main gate at dawn, curtains drawn, guards flanking it on all sides. Inside sat two servants dressed in Aldrich's and Marin's clothes, holding a bundle of blankets shaped like a baby. Aldrich watched from a tower window as the carriage rolled toward the forest road. "That'll buy us maybe an hour." "An hour isn't much," Marin said, adjusting the straps on her pack. "It's enough." Aldrich shifted Kieran in his arms. The baby hadn't made a sound in over 30 minutes. His skin was now more gray than pale, the black veins covering everything except his closed eyelids. "The passage I'm taking you through, only the reigning king knows about it. Not even Cassius. Why are you doing this?" Marin asked suddenly. "Defying your entire council for a human nanny you barely know?" Aldrich looked at her, really looked at her. This small, terrified woman who could have run the moment she saw Kieran poisoned, who could have saved herself by staying silent. Instead, she'd risked everything. "Because you're the only person in this entire castle who didn't betray me," he said simply. They descended through servant corridors, avoiding the main halls. Aldrich had sent most of the guards on wild goose chases, searching the wine cellars, the armory, the guest wings. Anywhere but where they actually were. Still, they nearly ran into a patrol near the kitchens. Aldrich pulled Marin into an alcove, pressing them both against the cold stone. His body shielded hers completely as boots echoed past. She was so small against him, heartbeat rabbiting with fear. Human. Fragile. Why was he risking his throne for her? The guards passed. This way, Aldrich led her through the kitchens, empty at this hour, and down a narrow staircase that looked like it led to a root cellar. At the bottom, he pressed his palm against a specific stone. The wall ground open, revealing darkness. "How far does this go?" Marin whispered. 3 miles. It exits in the foothills beyond the twilight forest. Aldrich produced a small light orb, standard vampire magic, and handed it to her. "Stay close. The path is uneven." They entered the passage. The stone door sealed behind them with a finality that made Marin flinch. The tunnel was ancient, carved by the first vampire king when the castle was built. Aldrich had used it only once before, fleeing an assassination attempt 2 centuries ago. The air smelled of earth and time. Kieran stirred weakly against his chest. "Hold on," Aldrich murmured. "Just hold on a little longer." They walked in silence for what felt like hours. The tunnel sloped steadily downward, then up again. Marin stumbled once, and Aldrich caught her elbow with his free hand. "Sorry," she gasped. "Can't see as well as you can." "We're almost there." The passage ended at another stone door. Aldrich pressed the release, and cool morning air rushed in. They emerged into a copse of trees, the castle visible in the distance behind them, perched on its mountain like a crown. 2 horses waited, held by a stable boy Aldrich trusted, a half-vampire named Marcus who'd grown up in the human territories. "Your Majesty," Marcus bowed, then froze when he saw Marin. "Sir," the council issued orders. "Anyone caught helping the human nanny will be—" "I know what they'll do." Aldrich handed Kieran to Marin, then took the reins of the larger horse. "You were never here, Marcus. Understand?" The boy nodded quickly and disappeared into the trees. Aldrich mounted his horse, a massive black stallion bred for vampire riders, then reached down for Kieran. Marin handed the baby up carefully, and Aldrich settled him in a sling across his chest, protected by his coat. "Can you ride?" he asked Marin. Well enough, she struggled onto the smaller mare, movements unpracticed but determined. They set off at a swift pace, following deer trails through the twilight forest. The woods were neutral ground, claimed by neither vampire nor human territories. That made them both safe and dangerous. No laws applied here. No protection. They'd been riding for maybe 20 minutes when Aldrich heard it. Hoofbeats. Behind them, multiple riders. "They found us already?" Marin looked back, panicked. The decoy must have failed. Aldrich urged his horse faster. Stay with me. The trees blurred past. Aldrich's stallion was faster than anything the guards rode, but Marin's mare was already struggling to keep pace. He could hear the pursuit getting closer, at least 6 riders, maybe more. Then the forest opened into a clearing, and Aldrich's heart sank. Lord Cassius sat on horseback at the far end, blocking the path. 5 vampire generals flanked him, all in full armor. They must have ridden hard through the main gate, anticipated this route. Aldrich pulled his horse to a halt. Marin stopped beside him, breathing hard. Your Majesty, Cassius's voice was cold. I hoped it wouldn't come to this.
Stand aside, Cassius.
I can't do that, the elder vampire dismounted, hand resting on his sword hilt. By order of the council, the human Marin Reeves is under arrest for conspiracy to murder the crown prince. And you, Your Majesty, are deemed temporarily unfit to rule due to mental influence. Mental influence? Aldrich's laugh was sharp. You're accusing a human of controlling a vampire king? We're accusing her of using your grief as a weapon, Cassius gestured, and the generals dismounted as well. Surrender the human. Return to the castle. Let the healers tend to Prince Kieran. This madness ends now. The healers can't help him. Only Elias Crane can. A human healer? Cassius's expression was contemptuous. Your Majesty, listen to yourself. You're abandoning your throne, your kingdom, to chase rumors and human superstition. This is exactly why the council has no choice but to. But to what? Aldrich interrupted.
Stajaku?
That's what this is, isn't it? You're using my son's poisoning as an excuse to seize power. Cassius's silence was answer enough. You knew, Aldrich said slowly. You knew about Seraphine's experiments. Maybe you even helped her. Seraphine believed the kingdom needed strength, Cassius replied. Your rule has made us weak, Your Majesty.
Tularating humans.
Seeking peace instead of dominance. She wanted to create an heir worthy of the vampire throne. One we could guide properly. One you could control, you mean? Does it matter? Cassius drew his sword. The prince is dying regardless. Surrender, and perhaps the council will show mercy. Aldrich looked at the 6 vampires blocking his path. All warriors. All loyal to Cassius, not to him. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew louder. More guards closing in. He was trapped. Your Majesty, Marin whispered. What do we do? Aldrich made a split-second decision. He wheeled his horse hard to the left, toward the thickest part of the forest. Hold tight. He spurred the stallion forward just as Cassius lunged. Steel whispered past Aldrich's ear. Then they were crashing into the underbrush, branches whipping past. After them, Cassius roared. The forest became a nightmare of motion. Aldrich's stallion leaped fallen logs, dodged between trees. Behind him, he could hear Marin's mare struggling to keep up, her breathing labored. A general burst from the trees to their right. Aldrich twisted, drawing the ceremonial sword he always carried. Their blades met with a shriek of metal. The general fell back, and they kept riding. The pursuit continued for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. The forest grew thicker, the paths more treacherous. Aldrich's supernatural senses guided them through terrain that would have been impossible for humans. Finally, blessedly, they broke through into mountain fog, the kind of thick, supernatural mist that clung to the border regions. Sound became muffled. Vision reduced to feet instead of yards. Aldrich slowed, listening.
No bats. No voices.
Did we lose them? Marin asked, barely audible. For now, Aldrich checked Kieran. The baby's lips were tinged blue. Time was running out. But we're off the main path. I don't know exactly where we are. Can you navigate by the stars? Not through this fog. Aldrich looked around at the impenetrable mist. We'll have to trust the horses to find a path. Your Majesty, Marin's voice was small. What Cassius said, about you being unfit to rule. If the council declares that, then I'm a traitor to my own kingdom, Aldrich finished. Yes,
I'm sorry.
Don't be, he looked at her through the fog. You saved my son when everyone else failed him. That's worth more than any throne. They rode on into the mist, outcasts now, hunted by the very kingdom Aldrich had ruled for 300 years. But Kieran was still breathing. And that, for now, was enough. The fog lifted by mid-afternoon, revealing a valley Aldrich didn't recognize. Fields stretched below them, golden with late harvest. And beyond those fields, nestled against a river, sat Thorn Hollow. The human town. There, Marin said, relief flooding her voice. That's it. Aldrich studied the settlement from their hidden position in the tree line. Wooden buildings with thatched roofs. A stone church at the center. Maybe 200 people, if that. It looked peaceful. Ordinary. It also looked like the kind of place where a vampire king would be torn apart on sight. I'll need to hide what I am, he said. Marin was already pulling a spare cloak from her pack.
Here.
Keep your hood up. Don't let anyone see your eyes. They're too silver. And for God's sake, don't smile. Your fangs will give you away. Aldrich wrapped the cloak around himself and Kieran, drawing the hood low. The baby hadn't opened his eyes in hours. His tiny chest barely rose and fell. They were out of time. They rode down the hillside slowly, trying not to draw attention. But the moment they reached the town's edge, people stopped and stared. A woman hanging laundry froze mid-motion. Two men repairing a fence straightened, hands moving toward tools that could double as weapons. Easy, Marin murmured. She dismounted and approached the nearest person, an older woman with flour-dusted hands. Excuse me, ma'am. I'm looking for Elias Crane. The healer? The woman's eyes flicked to Aldrich, still mounted, still hooded. Who's asking? My name is Marin Reeves. I'm from Atlanta originally, but I've been
Away.
This is my employer. His son is very sick. Sick how? The woman didn't move closer.
Poisoned.
Please, it's urgent. I was told Elias Crane might be able to help. The woman studied them for a long moment. Then she pointed down the main street. Blue house at the end. Past the mill. But Elias don't see just anyone. And he especially don't see. Her gaze locked on Aldrich again. He don't see folks who hide their faces. Thank you, Marin said quickly. They continued through town. The stairs followed them. Whispers spread like wildfire. They know, Aldrich said quietly. They can sense what I am. Just keep moving. The blue house sat slightly apart from the others, surrounded by a wild garden of herbs and strange plants. Smoke curled from the chimney. Before they could knock, the door opened. The man who stood there was perhaps 60, with steel-gray hair pulled into a ponytail and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He wore simple clothes, linen shirt, worn trousers, but his hands were stained with what looked like medicinal preparations. Elias Crane took one look at Aldrich and said, "No." He started to close the door. "Wait." Marin jammed her foot in the doorway. "Please, Mr. Crane. My grandmother spoke about you. Sarah Reeves? She said you taught her about old magic, real healing." "Sarah's dead 5 years now," Elias interrupted. "And she knew better than to bring vampires to my door." "He's not here to hurt anyone," Marin pleaded. "His son is dying. Poisoned with something called ancestral blood. I didn't know where else to go." "Ancestral blood?" Elias's expression shifted slightly. "Let me see the child." Aldrich hesitated, then carefully drew back his cloak. Kieran lay against his chest, wrapped in blankets, the black veins visible across his gray face. Elias's breath hissed between his teeth.
Jesus.
"Get inside.
Now.
Before the whole town sees." They hurried into the house. Elias slammed the door and drew the curtains. The interior was part home, part apothecary. Dried herbs hung from the ceiling. Shelves lined every wall, packed with bottles, jars, and books that looked centuries old. The air smelled of sage, and something sharper, sulfur, maybe. "Put him on the table," Elias commanded. Aldrich laid Kieran on a cleared space. The baby looked impossibly small on the large wooden surface. Elias bent over him, fingers moving with practiced precision. He checked Kieran's pulse, lifted his eyelids, examined the black veins spreading across his skin. His expression grew darker with each second. How long ago was he poisoned? Elias asked. 12 hours, Aldrich said. Maybe 13. And you're just now getting him to me? Elias straightened. Are you insane? Ancestral blood poisoning works fast in adults. In an infant, he should already be dead. He's strong, Aldrich said, though his voice cracked. He's fighting it. He's losing. Elias moved to his shelves, pulling down jars with swift efficiency. I can slow the decay, give you maybe another day or two. But I can't cure this. Nobody can. Ancestral blood rewrites vampire physiology at the cellular level. It's not something you just
fix.
There has to be something, Marin insisted. Elias was mixing something, powders and liquids that hissed when they combined. There's a ritual. Old vampire magic, from before the split. But it's been lost for centuries. Even if I knew the details, I couldn't perform it. I'm human. What kind of ritual? Aldrich demanded. A cleansing. It requires vampire magic to reverse vampire corruption. Elias poured the mixture into a small vial. But the texts were destroyed during the Purge Wars. If any copies exist, they'd be in vampire territory. Which, from the way you're both acting, I'm guessing is not an option. The council wants us dead, Marin said quietly. Elias looked at Aldrich with something like respect. You defied your own people for this child. He's my son. Fair enough. Elias approached with a vial. This will slow the corruption. Maybe buy you 48 hours. But that's all I can do without the ritual components. He carefully tilted Kieran's head back and let 3 drops fall onto the baby's tongue. Kieran's eyes fluttered open, silver, like his father's, but clouded with pain. Then he whimpered and closed them again. The ritual, Aldrich pressed. If you can't cure him, who can? Elias hesitated. There's a place. Stone Priest Ruins, about a day's ride north of here. The order that built it predated both our species. They served as mediators before the split. Their temples sometimes contain records that survived the wars. Sometimes. It's a long shot, Elias admitted. But it's the only shot you've got. Aldrich looked down at Kieran. 48 hours. 2 days to find a ritual that might not even exist, in ruins that might be empty. We'll take it, he said. Elias handed him the vial. Give him 3 more drops every 6 hours. No more, or you'll poison him further. And vampire. He met Aldrich's eyes. That boy is lucky to have a father willing to burn his kingdom for him. Don't let him die believing otherwise. I won't. Outside, voices rose. Angry voices. Elias moved to the window, peeked through the curtains. Town's getting restless. Someone must have spread word that I'm treating a vampire. You need to leave.
Now.
Will they hurt you? Marin asked. I've survived worse than small-town gossip. Elias opened the back door. Horses are around the side. Head north until you hit the Old King's Road, then follow it northeast. The ruins are marked by 3 standing stones. You can't miss them.
Thank you, Aldrich said.
Don't thank me yet. That baby might still die. Elias's expression softened slightly. But Sarah always said you should help people who love fiercely enough to fight impossible odds.
So go.
Fight. They slipped out the back as the front door shook with pounding fists. Aldrich gathered Kieran carefully, settling him back in the sling. Marin brought the horses around, and they mounted quickly. As they rode out of Thorn Hollow, Aldrich glanced back once. Elias stood in his doorway, facing down an angry crowd, defending the vampire king's escape with nothing but sharp words and sharper will. Some humans, Aldrich thought, were worth believing in. North, Marin asked. North, Aldrich confirmed. They rode toward the ruins, toward the impossible hope of a forgotten ritual, while Kieran's tiny heart beat fainter with each passing mile. They reached the ruins at dusk the following day. 3 massive standing stones marked the entrance, just as Elias had described, each carved with symbols that predated any language Aldrich knew. Beyond them lay the remnants of what must have once been a magnificent temple. Crumbling walls rose from overgrown courtyards. Archways led to nowhere. And at the center, half buried in vines, stood a circular structure with a domed roof somehow still intact. "This place feels old," Marin whispered, dismounting. "Really old." "The stone priests were ancient even when I was young," Aldrich said. He climbed down carefully, cradling Kieran. The baby had deteriorated further. His breathing now came in shallow gasps, and the black veins had reached his fingertips. They believed vampires and humans were once the same species. That we split because of a curse, not evolution. "Do you believe that?" "Right now, I'll believe anything that saves my son." They approached the domed building. The door had long since rotted away, leaving an opening into darkness. Aldrich created a light orb, and they entered. The interior was breathtaking. Murals covered every surface: walls, ceiling, floor. Scenes of humans and vampires living together, working together. Then the split, darkness consuming one group while light claimed the other. Pain and separation rendered in colors that still held power after millennia. "Look," Marin pointed to the far wall. "Is that the ritual?" Aldrich moved closer. The mural showed a child, impossible to tell if human or vampire, lying on an altar. Around the child stood figures in robes, hands raised. Above them, symbols spiraled: blood, fire, light, sacrifice. Beneath the image, text in Old Vampiric. Aldrich's hands trembled as he read aloud. "When the blood turns against itself, when corruption takes the innocent, only the willing sacrifice of opposite essence can restore balance. The human must give life. The vampire must give death. The child must give trust. Only then can the cleansing begin." "What does that mean?" Marin asked. "I'm not sure." Aldrich studied the symbols. "The human must give life. That could mean blood or life force. The vampire must give death, perhaps killing the corruption. And the child must give trust." He looked down at Kieran, unconscious in his arms. "Trust that we won't hurt him, maybe." "There's more writing here." Marin knelt beside a stone altar at the room's center. Carved into its surface were instructions, step by step. "It's like a recipe. First, you prepare the child. Then, the human participant must." "Oh God." "What?" "The human must bond their life force to the child's." Marin's voice shook. "It says the human becomes a temporary anchor, keeping the child alive while the vampire magic purges the corruption. But if the ritual fails, the human dies," Aldrich finished. "The child's death pulls them down too." Silence filled the chamber. "There has to be another way," Aldrich said finally. "Does there?" Marin looked up at him. "Your Majesty, Kieran has maybe 12 hours left. We barely made it here in time to even attempt this. If we wait, if we search for another solution." "You could die, Marin." "I could." She stood, brushing dust from her knees. "But I probably will anyway. Once your council finds us, and they will find us eventually, what do you think they'll do to me? Even if we save Kieran, even if we prove Seraphine was the traitor, I'm still human. Still a liability. I won't let them touch you. You might not have a choice." Her brown eyes were steady. "But right now, right here, I do have a choice. I can let this baby die, or I can try to save him. And I've been trying to save him since the moment I saw him poisoned. I'm not stopping now." Aldrich stared at her. This small, stubborn human who'd upended his entire world in less than 2 days. "Why do you care so much? He's not your child, not even your species." "I held him when he was born," Marin said softly. "I was there when he first opened his eyes. I've rocked him to sleep every night for 6 months. Maybe he's not my child by blood, but he's mine by choice. And I don't abandon children who need me." Something in Aldrich's chest cracked open. For 300 years, he'd ruled vampires who valued power, cunning, ruthlessness, who saw loyalty as a transaction and love as a weakness. This human, who had every reason to run, was choosing to risk everything for his son. If we do this, Aldrich said hoarsely, and you die, then you make sure Kieran grows up knowing someone loved him enough to die for him, Marin interrupted. Deal?
He couldn't speak.
Could only nod. Good. Marin began reading the ritual instructions more carefully.
We'll need supplies.
The mural mentions 3 components: purified water from a natural source, ground herbs, looks like sage and wolfsbane, and she squinted at the symbols. Your blood, I think, mixed with mine? I can handle that. Aldrich laid Kieran gently on the altar. The baby's eyes cracked open, silver irises barely visible.
Dada, que era vesperid.
His first word, and it shattered Aldrich completely. I'm here, Aldrich choked out. I'm right here. We're going to fix this. I promise. Kieran's tiny hand reached up. Aldrich caught it, held it carefully.
So small.
So fragile. There's a stream outside, Marin said, giving them privacy. I'll get the water. You gather wood for a fire. We'll need to heat the mixture. She left quickly, footsteps echoing. Aldrich stood alone with his son in the ancient temple. Around them, the murals depicted a time when vampires and humans weren't enemies, when cooperation was possible, when love crossed species lines without fear. Your mother would have liked Marin, Aldrich told Kieran softly. His wife had died bringing Kieran into the world, a rare tragedy, but vampires could still die in childbirth. She always believed humans and vampires could be more than what we are, that we could choose better. Kieran's eyes drifted closed again. Don't leave me, Aldrich whispered.
Please.
I've already lost your mother. I can't lose you too. But Kieran didn't respond. The black veins had reached his hairline now. Soon they'd cover everything. Marin returned with water cupped in her hands, having found no container. Streams about 30 yards east. Crystal clear. I think it counts as purified. Good. Aldrich forced himself to move. To focus. I saw sage growing near the entrance. Wolfsbane too. I'll gather them. They worked in coordinated silence, preparing the ritual components. Grinding herbs with stones. Mixing their blood, Marin's warm and red, Aldrich's cold and dark, into a clay bowl they found among the ruins. Heating the mixture over a small fire until it thickened to paste. Now what? Marin asked. Aldrich checked the instructions. I anoint him with the paste. Then you place your hands over his heart and give your consent. Tell the magic, that you offer your life willingly. And then I speak the words of cleansing. Aldrich's jaw tightened. And we pray this works. Marin took a shaky breath. Okay, let's do it. They positioned themselves around the altar. Kieran lay between them, a tiny figure drowning in corruption. Aldrich dipped his fingers in the warm paste and began marking symbols on his son's forehead, chest, hands. Ancient protection runes. Prayers to gods long forgotten. When he finished, Marin placed her hands gently over Kieran's heart. I consent, she said clearly. I offer my life force willingly to save this child, whatever it takes. The air grew heavy, charged. Magic older than kingdoms awakened in the stone around them. Aldrich began to chant in old vampiric, words flowing from memory he didn't know he possessed. The temple responded, the murals glowing faintly, the altar warming beneath Kieran's body. And then everything went wrong. The temple door exploded inward. Seraphine stepped through the wreckage, flanked by 6 robed figures Aldrich didn't recognize. Her eyes were wild, triumphant. Did you really think, the traitorous healer said, that I wouldn't follow you here? Aldrich's hand went to his sword, but Seraphine was faster. She raised her hand. An invisible force slammed him against the far wall. He hit stone hard enough to crack it, the impact driving the air from his lungs. Your Majesty. Marin started toward him, but one of the robed figures grabbed her, yanking her away from Kieran. Leave the human, Seraphine commanded. She's irrelevant. The figure released Marin, who scrambled back to the altar, placing herself between Seraphine and the baby. Aldrich struggled to his feet, ribs screaming. How did you find us?
Please.
You think I spent months planning this just to let you undo it? Seraphine moved deeper into the temple, the robed figures spreading out to block the exits. I've been tracking you since you left the castle. Every step, every desperate choice. You're working with Cassius, Aldrich said, pieces clicking together. The council's coup. You were part of it from the start. Not part of it, Seraphine's smile was cold. I orchestrated it. Cassius is a useful idiot who thinks he'll rule when you're gone. But the real power, the ability to shape vampire bloodlines, to create controllable heirs, that belongs to me. She approached the altar where Kieran lay dying. Maren stood her ground, though her hands shook. Such dedication, Seraphine observed. Tell me, human, why die for a monster's child? He's not a monster, Maren said. He's a baby. He's an experiment. Seraphine reached for Kieran, but Maren slapped her hand away. The healer's eyes flashed. You dare. Don't touch him. Maren's voice rang through the temple. Seraphine backhanded her. Maren flew backward, hitting the ground hard. She didn't get up. Maren. Aldrich lunged forward, but two of the robed figures intercepted him. They moved within human speed, vampires, then. Seraphine's followers. They drove him to his knees. One pressed a blade to his throat. Stay down, your majesty, the vampire hissed. Or we'll give you to Lord Cassius in pieces. Seraphine lifted Kieran from the altar. The baby was limp, barely breathing. Such a waste. The ancestral blood should have transformed him into something magnificent. Instead, he's just
Dying.
disappointing. Put him down, Aldrich snarled.
Why?
So you can complete some primitive ritual? Seraphine studied the murals with disdain. The stone priests were fools. They believed in balance, cooperation, peace between species. Look where it got them, extinct. They understood something you never will, Aldrich said. That power without compassion is just tyranny. And compassion without power is just weakness. Seraphine turned to her followers. Bind them both. We're taking them back to. The temple door exploded inward a second time. Lord Cassius strode in, flanked by a dozen vampire generals in full battle armor. His eyes swept the scene, Aldrich pinned, Maren unconscious, Seraphine holding the dying prince. Lady Seraphine, Cassius said coldly. How convenient to find you here. Seraphine's expression flickered. Lord Cassius. I've apprehended the traitor king, as we discussed. The human as well. Yes, I can see that. Cassius moved closer, his generals fanning out. What I don't see is why you felt the need to pursue them personally. We had an agreement. You would remain at the castle while I handled the retrieval. Plans changed, Seraphine said carefully. I received intelligence about their location and acted. Without consulting the council? Cassius's tone was dangerous.
How?
Independent of you. The tension in the temple ratcheted up. Aldrich watched through narrowed eyes as the two factions, Seraphine's robed followers and Cassius's armored generals, sized each other up. You're working against each other, Aldrich said suddenly. Both planning to take the throne, both using Kieran's poisoning as justification. But you never agreed on what comes after. Cassius's jaw tightened. Be silent. She wants to control the bloodline, Aldrich continued, his voice carrying. To create puppet heirs she can manipulate. You just want traditional power, the throne, the army, the kingdom. Neither of you actually cares about saving vampire society. You just want to rule it. I said be silent. Cassius drew his sword. Seraphine stepped back, clutching Kieran. Lord Cassius, surely we can discuss this rationally. Give me the prince, Cassius demanded.
Now.
I think not. Seraphine's free hand began to glow with dark magic. The child is my research. My creation. You have no claim to him. The council declared him a ward of the state. That makes him mine by law. Your law, not mine. The two conspirators stared each other down while their followers shifted into combat positions. Aldrich felt the blade at his throat press harder, but the vampire holding it was distracted, watching his lord. Across the temple, Maren stirred. Her eyes opened, and she locked gazes with Aldrich. He gave the smallest nod toward Kieran. She understood. Cassius raised his sword. Last chance, Seraphine. Surrender the prince, or... Maren launched herself at Seraphine from behind. The healer stumbled, her concentration breaking. Kieran slipped from her grasp. Aldrich moved. He drove his elbow back into his captor's face, shattering bone. The blade left his throat. He grabbed it, reversed it, and drove it through the vampire's chest in one fluid motion. Then he was moving, supernatural speed carrying him across the temple floor. He caught Kieran before the baby hit the ground, rolled, and came up in a defensive crouch. Kill them, Cassius roared. The temple erupted into chaos. Generals clashed with robed cultists. Magic and steel filled the air. Cassius charged toward Aldrich, sword raised. Seraphine was chanting something, dark energy gathering around her hands. Aldrich ran for the only exit not blocked by fighters, a gap in the wall where age had crumbled the stone. Maren was already there, blood streaming from her nose, but her eyes fierce. This way. She grabbed his arm. They burst through the gap and into the ruins' outer courtyard. Behind them, the sounds of battle intensified. Someone screamed. Metal rang against metal. The horses. Aldrich sprinted toward where they'd left the animals. But the clearing was empty. The horses had fled during the commotion. North side, Maren gasped, pointing. I saw a path, old road, maybe. An explosion rocked the temple. Stone dust billowed out.
They ran.
The path Maren had spotted wound through the ruins, narrow and overgrown. Aldrich could hear pursuit behind them, multiple vampires, moving fast. They're gaining. Maren stumbled over roots but kept running. Aldrich's mind raced. They couldn't outrun vampires on foot. Couldn't fight this many. And Kieran was dying in his arms, each breath more labored than the last. The path opened onto a cliff edge. Below, a ravine dropped 50 feet to a churning river. Behind them, footsteps closed in. Jump, Aldrich said. What? Jump. He grabbed Maren's hand and leaped off the cliff. They plummeted. The river rushed up. Aldrich twisted in midair, protecting Kieran with his body as they hit the water. The impact was like hitting concrete. Cold water closed over them. The current seized them immediately, dragging them downstream. Aldrich kicked hard, breaking the surface. Maren came up beside him, gasping. Swim for the bank, Aldrich shouted over the roar. They struggled against the current, Aldrich keeping Kieran's head above water with one arm while stroking toward shore with the other. Maren grabbed onto a fallen log and used it to pull herself to the muddy bank. She reached back, helping drag Aldrich and Kieran out of the water. They collapsed on the shore, soaked and shaking. Above, at the cliff's edge, silhouettes appeared. Cassius and his generals staring down. You can't run forever, Cassius's voice echoed. The kingdom has branded you traitor, Aldrich. There's nowhere left to hide. Aldrich struggled to his feet, cradling Kieran. The baby was barely alive, lips blue, skin gray, the black veins covering him completely now. We need shelter, Maren said through chattering teeth. He'll die from the cold alone. Aldrich looked around desperately. The river had carried them into dense forest. No roads. No signs of civilization. But ahead, through the trees, he saw something. The faint outline of structures. More ruins. There, he pointed. Come on. They staggered into the forest as night fell around them, hunted by their own people, their only hope now a forbidden ritual they hadn't been able to complete. But Kieran was still breathing. And as long as his son lived, Aldrich wouldn't stop fighting. The ruins were older than the first temple, ancient beyond measure. Crumbling stone doorways led into a hillside, half buried by centuries of earth and root growth. Aldrich carried Kieran inside while Maren followed, her wet clothes clinging to her shivering frame. The interior opened into a vast chamber carved from living rock, and covering every surface, walls, ceiling, floor, were murals. More stone priest artwork. Maren breathed, teeth chattering. Aldrich laid Kieran on a flat stone that might have once been an altar. The baby's breathing was so shallow now that Aldrich had to press his ear to the tiny chest to hear it at all. "We need fire," he said. "Dry clothes. Something." On it, Maren was already gathering debris. Old wood, dried moss, anything that might burn. Her hands shook so badly she could barely grip the flint Aldrich handed her. He took it back gently. "Let me." Within minutes, a small fire crackled to life. They huddled around it, steam rising from their wet clothes. Aldrich kept Kieran wrapped against his chest, trying to warm the baby with his own body heat. "Tell me about these murals," Maren said, desperate for distraction. "What do they show?" Aldrich studied the images surrounding them. The history. "Look. Here's the beginning. Humans and vampires as one people. Then something happens." He pointed to a scene of darkness consuming a tower. "A curse. A split. We become two species instead of 1 inch. And this?" Maren indicated a series of panels showing robed figures performing ceremonies. The stone priests trying to heal the divide. To reunite what was broken, Aldrich traced the images with his eyes. They failed. Or maybe they succeeded, and we just forgot. Maren moved closer to one wall, brushing away centuries of dust. "Your Majesty, look at this." The mural sheet uncovered showed the ritual they'd attempted, the child on the altar, the human and vampire working together. But this version had more detail. Additional steps. Instructions they hadn't seen in the first temple. "There's more to the ritual," Aldrich said, his heart racing. "After the human bonds their life force and the vampire begins the cleansing, there's a third component." He squinted at the ancient text. "A willing sacrifice of immortality." "What does that mean?" "I think," Aldrich's voice dropped to a whisper. "I think it means the vampire must give up years of their life. Transfer their vitality to the child. The human provides the anchor, but the vampire provides the power to actually heal." "How many years?" Aldrich studied the symbols. "It doesn't specify. However much is needed." He looked at Maren. "I'm 300 years old. I could live another 1,000 years, maybe more. If I give that up, if I give enough to save Kieran, I might age. Become mortal, even." "Would you die?" "Eventually. Like humans do." Maren was quiet for a moment. "Then, would you do it anyway?" Aldrich looked down at Kieran's gray face. At the son who might never grow up, never laugh, never live. Without hesitation, he said. "Then we complete the ritual." Maren stood, energy returning despite her exhaustion. "We have all the components from before, the paste, the words. We just need to add this final step." "Maren, you could still die. This doesn't change that risk." "I know," she met his eyes steadily. "But at least now we have a real chance. Before, we were fumbling in the dark. Now we know the full picture." Aldrich wanted to argue, to protect her, but he saw the determination in her face and recognized it, the same stubborn love that had made her hide Kieran in the first place. "Then we prepare," he said. They rebuilt the ritual space, using the mural as a guide. Aldrich relit the remaining paste, warming it over the fire. Maren cleared a flat area of floor, creating a circle with stones they found scattered throughout the chamber. As they worked, Aldrich studied the other murals. One sequence caught his attention, panels showing the aftermath of the ritual. A child restored to health. But also something else. Something troubling. "Maren," he said slowly. "This panel here. After the ritual completes, there's a consequence." She came to look. "What kind of consequence?" "The human who provides the life force bond. They're changed." Aldrich traced the image of a figure glowing with strange light. "The text says they become a bridge between neither fully human nor vampire, but something in the middle." What does that mean? I don't know. The stone priest's language is imprecise here, Aldrich frowned. It could mean you gain some vampire traits. Or lose some human ones.
Or.
Or I could become something completely different, Marin finished. Something neither species. Yes. Marin studied the mural for a long moment. Then she turned back to the ritual circle. Doesn't matter. Let's save Kieran first. We'll worry about the rest later. You're remarkable, Aldrich said quietly. You know that. She smiled, small and sad.
I'm terrified.
But I'm also really stubborn.
Ever noticed?
They completed the preparations as the fire burned low. Aldrich laid Kieran in the center of the stone circle. The baby's eyes fluttered open briefly, silver irises barely visible through the corruption. Dada, Kieran whispered again, the word barely audible. I'm here, little one, Aldrich's voice broke. I'm going to fix this. I promise. Marin knelt on one side of the circle. Aldrich knelt opposite her. Between them, Kieran lay dying. Ready? Aldrich asked. Marin placed her hands over Kieran's heart. Ready? Aldrich began the chant, old vampiric words flowing from his lips. The air grew thick with power. The murals around them started to glow faintly, as if the ancient magic recognized what they were attempting. Marin spoke her consent. I offer my life force willingly. I anchor this child to the living world, whatever the cost. Her hands began to glow, soft golden light spreading from her palms into Kieran's chest. The baby gasped, back arching. Aldrich continued chanting, adding the new component. I offer my immortality willingly. I give my vitality to restore what was corrupted. I sacrifice eternity for one more day with my son. Pain lanced through him, real, physical pain. His hands, still anointing Kieran with the ritual paste, began to show signs of age. Fine lines appearing around his knuckles. His flawless vampire skin showing its first imperfection in 3 centuries. The black veins in Kieran's body began to recede. Slowly at first, then faster. The corruption pulling back from his face, his hands, his tiny feet. It's working, Marin gasped. Her face had gone pale, but she held firm. Aldrich felt years bleeding away. A decade.
2.
His hair, jet black a moment ago, began showing threads of silver at the temples. But Kieran's skin was returning to its natural pale color. His breathing deepened. His eyes opened wider. Almost there, Aldrich gritted out. Just a little more. An explosion rocked the chamber. The ritual circle shattered. Magic backlashed, throwing both Aldrich and Marin backward. Kieran cried out, not in pain but in fear. Through the smoke and dust, a figure strode into the chamber. Seraphine, her robes torn, her hair wild, her eyes burning with madness. Did you think you could escape me? She raised her hands, dark magic crackling between her fingers. Did you think I'd let you undo years of work? Behind her, more figures emerged. Not Cassius's generals, these were different vampires. Hunters, by the look of them. Mercenaries Seraphine must have hired. The ritual was incomplete, Seraphine said, moving toward Kieran. The prince is still corrupted. Still mine. And now, your majesty, you're going to watch him die. She reached for the baby. Aldrich, aged but not broken, launched himself at her. The real battle was about to begin. Aldrich's fist connected with Seraphine's jaw. The healer staggered back, shock flashing across her face. Kings weren't supposed to fight with their bare hands. They had soldiers for that.
Guards.
Proxies. But Aldrich had stopped being that kind of king the moment he defied his council for a human nanny. You want my son? Aldrich's voice was raw fury. Come through me first. Seraphine wiped blood from her lip, then smiled. As you wish. She unleashed a wave of dark magic. Aldrich barely dodged, the energy searing past his shoulder and blasting a chunk from the wall behind him. He rolled, came up with a piece of broken stone, and hurled it. It caught Seraphine in the ribs, making her stumble. The mercenary vampires moved to intervene, but Marin was already moving. She'd grabbed a fallen timber, part of the ruined ceiling, and swung it like a baseball bat. It caught the nearest mercenary across the knees.
He went down hard.
"Protect Kieran," Aldrich shouted. Maren scrambled to the ritual circle, positioning herself over the baby. 2 mercenaries closed in on her. She gripped the timber like her life depended on it, which it did. Seraphine's hands glowed again. Magic building. "You've aged, Aldrich.
I can see it.
Silver in your hair. Lines in your face. The ritual took decades from you, and you didn't even finish it. How much more can you afford to lose?" "Everything," Aldrich said simply. "I'll lose everything for him." He charged. Seraphine threw another blast of magic. This time Aldrich didn't dodge. He ran straight through it, accepting the burning pain as the price of closing distance. His hands found her throat. They crashed to the ground together, rolling across ancient stone. Seraphine's magic scorched his arms, his chest, but he didn't let go. Couldn't let go. "You're insane," Seraphine gasped. "I'm a father," Aldrich snarled. She kneed him in the stomach. His grip loosened. She twisted free, drove her elbow into his face. His nose broke with a wet crack, another new experience in centuries. Blood, his own blood, hot and red. Across the chamber, Maren was holding her own against impossible odds. She'd learned to fight in the vampire court, not formal training, but survival instincts honed over 6 months of being the only human in a predator's nest. She ducked under a mercenary's swing, jabbed the timber's end into his solar plexus, then brought it up into his chin. He dropped. The second mercenary grabbed the timber, yanked it from her hands. She kicked him, hard, right between the legs. Vampire or not, that still hurt. He doubled over, and she brought her knee up into his face. But there were 4 more mercenaries, and they were all closing in. "Maren!" Aldrich tried to reach her, but Seraphine tackled him from behind. They grappled on the floor. Seraphine was a trained healer. She knew every vulnerable point in vampire anatomy. Her fingers found pressure points, magical and physical, that sent agony shooting through Aldrich's body. He headbutted her.
Once. Twice.
She reeled back. "Why?" Aldrich demanded, pinning her. "Why do this? What could possibly justify trying to murder a baby? Murder?" Seraphine laughed, blood on her teeth. "I was trying to save our species. Your soft rule is killing us, Aldrich. Decades of peace with humans, of treaties and cooperation. We're predators playing at being civilized. The ancestral blood would have made Kieran strong, powerful, a true vampire king, not this weak shadow of what we once were. He's 4 months old. Exactly. Young enough to shape, to mold into what we need." Seraphine's eyes were wild. "But you couldn't see it. Couldn't see that your son was the answer. So I took matters into my own hands." "You took matters?" Aldrich's voice dropped to something cold and deadly. "You poisoned my infant son because you didn't like my politics. I tried to transform him into our salvation." Aldrich's hands tightened on her throat. For the first time in his long life, he wanted to kill not out of necessity or defense, but out of pure rage. To end the person who'd hurt his child. His hands began to squeeze. "Your Majesty!" Maren's scream cut through the red haze. Aldrich's head snapped up. 3 mercenaries had Maren pinned. The 4th had reached the ritual circle, had picked up Kieran. Everything stopped. The mercenary held Kieran carelessly, like a sack of grain. The baby cried weakly, the black veins still covering half his tiny body, the ritual incomplete, the corruption still present. "Drop the healer," the mercenary said, "or the prince dies." Aldrich's hands loosened on Seraphine's throat. She gasped, coughing, but smiled through the pain. "It's over, Aldrich," she wheezed. "You lost." Aldrich stood slowly, hands visible, empty. His mind raced through scenarios. He was faster than any human, stronger than most vampires. But not faster than the mercenary could snap a baby's neck. not strong enough to save Kieran from this distance. For the first time, he was truly helpless. "What do you want?" Aldrich asked. "The ritual completed," Seraphine said, climbing to her feet. "But done correctly. Your way tried to purge the ancestral blood. My way will integrate it, make the prince strong instead of killing him. Your way nearly killed him in the first place, because I didn't have the right components. Now I do," Seraphine gestured at Marin. "Human life force as an anchor. Vampire vitality as fuel. I can complete what I started. Transform Kieran into something magnificent, something you control," Aldrich said bitterly. "Does it matter? This way he lives. Your way, we just watched him dying," Seraphine extended her hand. "Give me permission to complete the ritual, or your son dies here, now, corrupted and suffering." Aldrich looked at Kieran, at his son crying in a stranger's arms, his small body still ravaged by poison. Then he looked at Marin, pinned but not broken, her brown eyes locked on his. And he saw something there. Not surrender, not fear.
Trust.
She trusted him to make the right choice. Even now, even when every option was terrible. "No," Aldrich said quietly. Seraphine's expression hardened.
No.
"I won't let you touch him," Aldrich's voice gained strength. "I won't let you turn my son into a weapon, into something twisted and controlled. If he dies, if we all die, at least he dies free. You're condemning him. I'm protecting him." Aldrich met Seraphine's eyes. "From you. From Cassius. From everyone who sees him as a tool instead of a child. And if that means we don't leave this chamber alive, then so be it." "You're insane," Seraphine breathed. Maybe Aldrich glanced at Marin again. She nodded, understanding. "But I'd rather be insane than let you hurt him again." He moved. Not toward the mercenary holding Kieran. That's what they expected. Instead, he lunged for Marin, grabbed her, yanked her free from the vampires holding her, threw her toward the ritual circle. "Completed," he roared.
Now.
Marin rolled, came up beside the startled mercenary. Before he could react, she snatched Kieran from his arms and dove into the ritual circle. The mercenaries converged. Seraphine screamed orders. Magic filled the air. But Aldrich was already there, standing between them and his son. One vampire against 8. Aged, injured, exhausted. But still fighting. "You want him?" Aldrich spread his arms, blocking the circle completely. "You go through me, and I promise, I'll take at least half of you with me." Behind him, he heard Marin begin the ritual chant. Heard Kieran's weak cry as she placed her hands over his heart. Heard the ancient magic stirring once more. The mercenaries hesitated. Even Seraphine paused, because they could all see the truth in Aldrich's eyes. He meant every word. "Kill him," Seraphine ordered. They attacked as one. And Aldrich, the vampire king who'd ruled for 300 years, who'd just sacrificed decades of his immortal life, who'd betrayed his entire kingdom for one fragile human and one dying baby. Aldrich smiled. Because behind him, golden light was beginning to grow. The ritual had begun again. And this time, nothing would stop it. Aldrich caught the first mercenary's sword thrust, letting it pierce his shoulder rather than reach Marin and Kieran behind him. He twisted, snapped the blade, and drove the broken end back into its owner's chest. The vampire crumbled to ash. 7 left. Pain exploded across his back, claws raking deep. Aldrich spun, his own fist connecting with ribs. Bone shattered. But 2 more mercenaries grabbed his arms, holding him immobile.
Now,
Seraphine shouted. The remaining vampires surged forward. Aldrich kicked, thrashed, but they had him pinned. They would get past him. They would reach Marin, reach Kieran. Then the ritual circle erupted with light. Golden energy surged outward in a wave, throwing the mercenaries back like leaves in a storm. Aldrich staggered, suddenly free, and turned to see Marin kneeling in the center of the circle, hands pressed to Kieran's chest. But she was glowing. Not just her hands, her entire body radiated golden light. And Kieran, the black veins were burning away, consumed by the light, his gray skin flushing with healthy color.
Impossible, Séraphine bretted.
She's not strong enough. No human is strong enough to. She loves him, Aldrich said. That makes her stronger than you'll ever understand. Marin's voice rang out, speaking the ritual words in perfect old vampiric, a language she shouldn't know, couldn't possibly have learned. The ancient magic was flowing through her, using her as a conduit. I am the bridge, Marin chanted. I am the anchor. I bind life to life, human to vampire, present to future. I offer everything. The light intensified. Aldrich felt the pull, the ritual demanding its price. His immortality. His vitality. Years, decades, centuries bleeding away. He stepped into the circle willingly. I am the vessel, Aldrich said, placing his hands over Marin's. I am the sacrifice. I give my eternity for his tomorrow. I offer everything. Their magic combined, human and vampire, love and power, desperation and hope. It poured into Kieran like a flood breaking through a dam. The baby arched his back, crying out not in pain but in transformation. The black veins shattered like glass. Dark energy erupted from Kieran's small body, expelled by the cleansing ritual. It took form in the air above him, a writhing mass of corruption, ancestral blood gone wrong. And Séraphine, unable to help herself, reached for it.
No.
Aldrich lunged, but he was too late. The corrupted energy slammed into Séraphine. She screamed as it invaded her body, the very poison she'd created now consuming its creator. Black veins erupted across her skin, spreading impossibly fast. It's mine, she shrieked, trying to control it, to harness it. I made this. I control. But the corruption had been rejected by a royal bloodline. It recognized no master now. Only hunger. Seraphine's body began to crack like porcelain. Light leaked through the fissures, not golden like the ritual, but red like old blood. She staggered toward Aldrich, hand outstretched. I was trying to save us, she whispered, her voice breaking. I was trying to make us strong again, to restore what we lost. Don't you see? The humans are taking over, Aldrich. They outnumber us 1,000 to 1. In another century, vampires will be nothing but myths. I wanted us to survive. Not like this, Aldrich said quietly. Never like this. Then what's left? Blood leaked from Seraphine's eyes. What future do we have if not dominance? Coexistence, Marin said, still kneeling in the circle. Partnership. Trust. Seraphine laughed, a broken, bitter sound. Trust? From the species that hunted us for centuries? That burned our sanctuaries and murdered our children. Some of them, Marin said. Not all of us. Just like not all vampires are like you. Seraphine looked at her for a long moment, then down at Kieran, now healthy and whole in the center of the circle, his silver eyes clear and bright. He'll never be what I envisioned, Seraphine said. Never be the weapon we needed. Good, Aldrich replied. He'll be better. He'll be himself. The cracks in Seraphine's skin widened. She was dissolving, consumed by her own creation. Cassius won't stop. The council won't forgive. They'll hunt you, both of you, and when they find you, let them come, Aldrich said. Seraphine smiled one last time, sad, resigned, perhaps even regretful. You always were too noble for your own good, Your Majesty. That's why I thought. Why I believed, she swayed, her form becoming translucent.
I'm sorry.
For what it's worth.
I'm sorry.
Then she shattered completely. The corruption consumed itself in a final flash of red light, and Seraphine was gone. Just ash on ancient stone. Silence fell in the chamber. The remaining mercenaries, seeing their employer dead and the ritual complete, fled into the darkness. Aldrich let them go. He was too tired to chase them, too tired to care. He stumbled into the circle and collapsed beside Maren and Kieran. The baby looked up at him with bright, clear eyes. The black veins were completely gone. His skin was healthy pale, his breathing steady and strong. He smiled, actually smiled, and reached his tiny hands toward his father. "Dada," Kieran said. Then, looking at Maren, "Mama?" Maren's breath caught. Tears streamed down her face. I'm not your." "You are now," Aldrich said softly. He looked at her, really looked at her. The ritual had changed her. Her eyes, once purely brown, now held flecks of silver. Her skin, while still human warm, had a faint luminescence. The bridge between. Neither fully human nor vampire. The ritual bound you to him, to us. Maren lifted her hands, staring at them. The golden glow had faded, but something remained. She could feel it, a connection to Kieran, to Aldrich, like invisible threads linking their hearts. "I can feel him," she whispered. "His heartbeat. His life." "The blood bond," Aldrich said. "It's not supposed to be possible with humans. But you're not fully human anymore. The ritual changed you fundamentally." "I'm scared," Maren admitted. "So am I." Aldrich gathered both her and Kieran into his arms. His body ached with new sensations, mortal sensations. Hunger, exhaustion, the weight of years he'd sacrificed. His reflection in a pool of water near the ritual circle showed a man in his 40s, silver threading through his hair, lines carved around his eyes. 300 years reduced to perhaps 3 more decades, maybe 4 if he was lucky. But his son was alive. "What happens now?" Maren asked. Aldrich looked toward the chamber entrance, where dawn light was just beginning to filter through. Outside, the world waited. A council that wanted them dead. A kingdom divided. Enemies on all sides. But here, in this ancient place built by those who believed in unity, sat a vampire king, a human woman, and a baby prince who carried both their blood, both their hopes. "Now," Aldrich said, "we go home. We face the council. And we show them exactly what Kieran has become, not a weapon, not a tool, but proof that our species can be more than enemies. More than predators and prey." "They'll never accept that," Maren said. "Maybe not today." Aldrich looked down at Kieran, who had fallen asleep against his chest, peaceful and whole. "But someday. Because he'll grow up knowing that a human woman risked everything to save him. That his father gave up eternity to heal him. He'll know what love looks like across species lines. And when he's old enough," Maren added softly, "he'll teach others." Exactly. Outside, footsteps approached. Multiple sets. Heavy boots on stone. Aldrich tensed, ready for another fight. But when the figures appeared in the doorway, they weren't Cassius's generals or more mercenaries. They were 5 of the vampires who'd initially pursued them, the generals who'd been present at the first ritual. They stood in the entrance, weapons sheathed, and slowly, one by one, they knelt. "Your Majesty," the lead general said, "we witnessed everything. The sacrifice, the ritual, the healer's confession." He raised his head. "Lord Cassius's coup was built on lies. We will not follow a traitor who used a baby's poisoning for political gain. We serve the true king." Aldrich stared at them, barely daring to hope. And the others? The council? Divided. But word of what happened here is spreading. Many believe Cassius and Seraphine conspired together. The evidence is substantial. It wasn't victory, not complete, but it was a beginning. Aldrich stood, still cradling Kieran, Maren rising beside him. "Then we end this," he said. "We return to the capital. We present the truth. And we rebuild what they tried to destroy." The generals bowed deeper. "As you command, Your Majesty." They returned to the ritual chamber at dawn, the first one, where the murals were clearest and the ancient magic strongest. The generals formed a protective perimeter while Aldrich, Maren, and Kieran prepared to complete what they'd started. "One more time," Maren said, laying out the ritual components they'd gathered from both temples. To make sure the corruption is completely purged, and to stabilize the bond, Aldrich added. He could feel it now, the connection between the three of them, fragile and new. Marin's humanity, his fading immortality, Kieran's innocent trust binding them together. But the bond was incomplete.
Raw.
It needed the ritual's final blessing to set properly. The loyal generals had brought supplies, fresh herbs, purified water from a sacred spring, materials mentioned in the ancient texts. Everything they needed to do this right. Kieran sat in the center of the circle, playing with his fingers. His silver eyes tracked his father's movements.
Healthy. Whole.
But Aldrich could still sense fragility beneath the surface. The ancestral blood's damage went deep, even if the visible symptoms were gone. Your Majesty, General Marcus approached. Before you begin, you should know, Lord Cassius fled when word reached him of Seraphine's death. But he left a message. The general's jaw tightened. He's declared you an usurper, claims you murdered the healer and planned to raise the prince as a human sympathizer. Half the court believes him. And the other half? Aldrich asked. Waiting to see who survives, Marcus met his eyes. Politics as usual, Your Majesty. Aldrich almost laughed. He'd sacrificed centuries of his life, defied his entire kingdom, fought his own generals, and still the court played games. Let them wait, he said. This is more important. He entered the circle and knelt opposite Marin. Kieran crawled between them, reaching for both their hands. Last chance to walk away, Aldrich told Marin. Once this bond is sealed, you'll be tied to the vampire royal line forever. No going back to your old life. No returning to humanity completely. Marin looked at Kieran, then at Aldrich. I made my choice in that nursery when I hid him from Seraphine. Everything since then has just been following through. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. She placed her hands over Kieran's heart. Let's finish this. Aldrich began the chant. The old vampiric words came easier now, as if the language itself recognized him as worthy. The air shimmered. The murals on the walls began to glow, softly at first, then brighter. I offer my vitality, Aldrich said, feeling the pull immediately. More years bleeding away, his hair turning silver from the roots. Fine lines deepening around his eyes and mouth. I give my strength so he may grow strong. I give my years so he may have decades. His hands, placed over Marin's, began to glow with silvery light. I offer my life force, Marin continued. I anchor him to this world. I bridge the divide between our peoples. I give my humanity so he may know compassion. Her hands glowed golden. Where their light mixed, it turned to something new, neither silver nor gold, but something in between. Something that had never existed before.
Kieran gasped.
His small body rose slightly from the ground, suspended in the combined magic. The last traces of corruption, invisible threads Aldrich could only now sense, burned away completely. But more than that, something new was forming. A true blood bond, not just between father and son, but between all three of them. Aldrich felt Marin's heartbeat as if it were his own. Felt her fear and determination and fierce protective love. Felt Kieran's innocent wonder and trust. And in return, they felt him. His guilt over not protecting his son sooner. His grief for his lost wife. His desperate hope that all of this meant something. The ritual reached its peak. Light flooded the chamber, so bright the generals had to shield their eyes. Aldrich felt something tear free from his chest, not painful, but profound, like a piece of himself breaking off and reforming. His immortality, the core of what made him vampire. He could feel it flowing out of him, through his hands into Kieran. Not as corruption, as gift. His son would have vampire strength, vampire speed, vampire senses, but also human warmth, human capacity for change and growth and connection. A true hybrid of both species, made possible only through sacrifice. The light dimmed. The three of them collapsed together, gasping. Aldrich caught Kieran before the baby could hit the ground. Maren slumped against his shoulder. They sat in a tangled heap, breathing hard, alive. "Is it done?" Maren whispered. Aldrich checked Kieran. The baby's skin was perfect, not gray, not too pale, but a healthy color he'd never had before. His eyes were bright and alert. His heartbeat strong and steady. And when Aldrich looked at his own hands, he saw the truth written in his aging flesh. Mortality. He'd given up approximately 200 years, the ritual calculated. He could feel it in his bones, the weight of time, the knowledge that he would grow old now, would eventually die like humans did. Perhaps he had 70 years left, perhaps 100 if he was lucky. A heartbeat compared to what he'd had. "It's done," Aldrich confirmed. His voice was rougher now, aged. "The bond is complete. The corruption is gone."
Kieran is.
"He's perfect." Maren touched her own face, feeling the changes. Her skin was smoother than before, more resilient. Her eyes saw better in the dim light. Her hearing picked up conversations from the generals outside that should have been too far away. "I'm different," she said. "You're the bridge between," Aldrich repeated. "Part human, part vampire. Something new. Will I age?" "I don't know," Aldrich admitted. "No one's ever done this before." Kieran, oblivious to the profound changes surrounding him, grabbed Aldrich's finger and squeezed. Then he looked at Maren and smiled, a pure, joyful expression. "Mama," he said clearly. Maren's eyes filled with tears.
"Oh, sweetheart. Yes."
"I'm here." She gathered him into her arms, and Aldrich wrapped around them both. They sat like that for a long time, just breathing, just being alive together. Outside, General Marcus's voice called. "Your Majesty? We have riders approaching. Multiple banners. It looks like half the court. Both factions." Aldrich stood slowly, his body protesting in new ways. Maren rose beside him, Kieran cradled in her arms. "They've come for their answer," Maren said. "Then let's give them one." Aldrich straightened. Despite the aches, despite the mortality weighing on him, he was still a king. Still Kieran's father. Still the vampire who'd chosen love over power. They walked out of the temple together. The valley below was filled with vampires. Hundreds of them, split into two distinct groups. On one side, Cassius's supporters, the traditionalists who wanted human subjugation and vampire dominance. On the other, those who'd remained loyal, or who'd simply waited to see how this would end. They all went silent when Aldrich emerged. He stood on the temple steps, Maren beside him, Kieran in her arms. The morning sun touched his silver hair, his aged face. The physical proof of his sacrifice was written on his body for all to see. "I am Aldrich," his voice carried across the valley. "King of the vampire nation. Father to Prince Kieran. And I have sacrificed 2 centuries of my immortal life to save my son from the corruption that threatened to destroy him." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Lady Seraphine poisoned the prince with ancestral blood, attempting to create a weapon she could control. Lord Cassius conspired with her, planning to use the chaos to seize power. Both have been dealt with. Aldrich's voice hardened. "And now you will choose. Follow me, knowing I have decades left instead of millennia. Knowing I value peace with humans over dominance. Knowing my son carries both vampire and human blood. Or reject me and tear this kingdom apart in civil war."
Silence.
Long and terrible. Then General Marcus stepped forward and knelt. "I follow the king who sacrificed eternity for his child. That is the king I choose." One by one, the loyal faction knelt. And slowly, grudgingly, even some of Cassius's supporters joined them. Not all. Perhaps half of the traditionalists turned and left, refusing to accept a mortal king and a half-human prince. But enough remained. Enough to rebuild. Aldrich looked at what was left of his court and felt something unexpected. Hope. "Then we begin again," he said. "We build something new. Something better. Starting today." Kieran, watching the kneeling vampires with wide eyes, clapped his hands together. And despite everything, the pain, the loss, the uncertain future, Aldrich smiled. His son was alive, and that made every sacrifice worth it. 3 weeks later, Aldrich stood before the vampire court in the great throne room. Silver now streaked his temples completely, lines carved deeper around his eyes. But his gaze was steady as he held Kieran in his arms, healthy, laughing, grabbing at his father's hair with chubby fingers. Merrin stood at his right hand, wearing robes of deep blue, the color traditionally reserved for royal advisors. Her presence there had caused scandals at first, death threats from traditionalists, whispered accusations of mind control and human treachery. But Aldrich had ended those whispers with a single decree. Anyone who threatened Merrin threatened the prince's guardian. And threatening the guardian meant execution. The threats had stopped. Mostly. Members of the court, Aldrich's voice rang through the chamber. We gather today to formalize the changes that saved my son's life and exposed the corruption in our highest ranks. Lord Cassius's former seat sat empty, a deliberate reminder. The conspirator had fled to the Eastern Territories with perhaps 50 loyalists. A problem for later. Today was about moving forward. Lady Seraphine's experiments are hereby banned in perpetuity, Aldrich continued. Any research into forced bloodline manipulation will be treated as high treason. The ancestral blood archives will be sealed and placed under royal guard. Murmurs of agreement. Even the traditionalists nodded. Seraphine's betrayal had shaken them all. Second, Aldrich said, I formally recognize Merrin Reeves as guardian of blood to Prince Kieran. This is a new position, created to honor the human who risked her life to save the heir. She will have full authority over the prince's care, education, and protection. Her word, in matters concerning Kieran, is second only to mine. The murmurs grew louder. Lady Morgana stood, her expression carefully neutral. Your Majesty, with respect. A human with such authority over the royal bloodline? It's unprecedented. Everything about the last month has been unprecedented, Aldrich replied. Merrin has proven her loyalty beyond doubt. She will serve as guardian until Kieran reaches his majority. This is not a request for approval. This is my decree as king. Lady Morgana sat slowly. Around the room, vampires exchanged glances, some concerned, some curious, a few openly hostile. But none challenged him directly. Because they all saw what the ritual had cost him. The silver hair, the mortal body, the decades sacrificed. And more than that, they saw the result. A healthy prince where there should have been only ash and grief. Third, Aldrich continued, I propose a formal treaty with the human territories. Beginning with Thornhollow, where the healer Elias Crane provided crucial aid. We will establish trade, cultural exchange, and mutual protection agreements. Now the protests erupted. Ally with humans? Lord Theron stood, incredulous. Your Majesty, they've hunted us for centuries. And we've hunted them, Aldrich countered. How many more centuries do we waste on that cycle? My son lives because a human woman and a human healer helped save him. That's a debt I won't ignore. And more than that, he lifted Kieran higher. It's a precedent we must follow. Look at him. Vampire blood and human protection made him whole. We need each other, whether we like it or not. Some humans, perhaps, Lady Morgana said carefully. But all of them? Your Majesty, you're proposing we trust our greatest enemy based on the actions of two exceptional individuals. I'm proposing we try, Aldrich said. I'm proposing we choose something better than endless war. He met each council member's eyes in turn. We can continue as we have, isolated, paranoid, growing weaker as human technology advances. Or we can adapt, evolve, build bridges instead of walls. And if they betray us? Theron demanded. Then we'll deal with it, Aldrich's voice was hard. But we'll do so from a position of attempted peace, not assumed hostility. The old ways nearly destroyed my son. I won't let them destroy my kingdom.
Silence fell.
Then, surprisingly, Lady Morgana stood again. Your Majesty, I request permission to visit this human healer, Elias Crane. I want to speak with him myself, to assess whether this cooperation is viable. Aldrich studied her. Morgana was no ally. She'd sided with Cassius until the evidence became overwhelming. But she was pragmatic. If she saw value in human partnership, others would follow. Permission granted, Aldrich said. General Marcus will escort you. And Morgana? He waited until she met his eyes. Go with an open mind. You might be surprised. She inclined her head, and Saturday. The council debated for hours. Some proposals passed easily. The ban on ancestral blood research, increased security around the prince. Others faced resistance. The Human Treaty, Marin's new title, changes to the succession laws to account for Kieran's unique nature. But slowly, grudgingly, the court adapted. Because Aldrich had proven something fundamental, he would sacrifice everything for his beliefs. His immortality, his kingdom, his very life, if necessary. That kind of conviction couldn't be ignored. As the session ended and courtiers filed out, Marin approached with Kieran. The baby had fallen asleep during the long debates, drooling slightly on her shoulder. How do you think it went? She asked quietly. Better than expected. Worse than hoped, Aldrich touched Kieran's soft hair. But it's a start. Will they ever truly accept me?
Some will.
Some won't, he looked at her. This woman who'd become so central to his life in such a short time. But you're part of the royal family now, Marin. Guardian of blood. The first human to ever hold such a position. That makes you untouchable by law. And by custom. Custom changes, Aldrich smiled slightly. We're proof of that. General Marcus approached, bowing. Your Majesty, the Eastern Scouts report movement. Cassius is building support among the border clans. He's calling himself the true king now. Let him call himself whatever he wants, Aldrich said. We have work to do here. But if he attacks, then we'll defend ourselves. But we won't strike first. We won't give him justification. Aldrich shifted, feeling the ache in his knees, a mortal sensation he was still adjusting to. Send word to the eastern garrisons. Defensive positions only. And send an envoy to Cassius offering negotiation. Marcus looked skeptical but nodded. As you command. They walked through the castle together. King, guardian, and sleeping prince. Servants bowed as they passed. Some with genuine respect. Others with barely concealed contempt. But all acknowledged them. At the nursery door, Marin paused. Your Majesty. Aldrich. Can I ask you something? Always. Do you regret it? Giving up your immortality? Your strength? Everything you were? Aldrich looked at Kieran, peaceful in sleep. Then at Marin, who'd become family in ways he never expected. Finally, at his own aged hands, mortal hands that would eventually fail, would eventually stop. Not for a second, he said. I ruled for 3 centuries thinking power was what mattered. That strength and immortality made me worthy. But I was wrong. What matters instead? This, he gestured at the nursery, at Kieran, at her.
Love. Choice.
Sacrifice. I'm more of a king now, with decades left instead of centuries, than I ever was before. Marin smiled, tears glistening. He's lucky to have you as a father. We're both lucky to have you. She carried Kieran into the nursery. Aldrich followed, helping settle the baby into his crib, the same crib where this had all started, where Marin had hidden him from Seraphine's poison. So much had changed. So much had been lost. But so much had been gained. Kieran stirred, eyes opening briefly. He looked at Aldrich, then at Marin, then smiled.
Dada.
Mama, he whispered, then drifted back to sleep. Aldrich felt his heart, his mortal, aging, limited heart, swell with something bigger than immortality. Bigger than kingdoms. Love. Pure and simple and worth everything. Come on, Marin said softly. We both need rest. Tomorrow we start building your new kingdom. Our kingdom, Aldrich corrected. The three of us together. They left the nursery, leaving the door slightly ajar, so they could hear if Kieran needed them. In the hallway beyond, the castle settled into nighttime routines. Guards changed shifts. Servants extinguished lanterns. The court rested. And in the heart of it all, a mortal king, a human guardian, and a half-vampire prince slept peacefully. The kingdom was fractured. Enemies lurked. Challenges waited. But they would face them together. And that, Aldrich thought as sleep finally claimed him, was a future worth fighting for. A future built not on power or dominance or fear, but on trust. On love that crossed species lines. On a father who'd burned his entire world to save his son, and discovered that from those ashes, something better could grow. The old order of blood had ended. The new one had just begun. The end.